Welcome to the Therapist Files, real talk with mental health pros, where seasoned therapists pull back the curtain on the world of mental health. Join us for candid, no-nonsense conversations filled with insider wisdom, real-world insights, and practical advice. Whether you're a new therapist seeking guidance or someone passionate about normalizing mental health discussions, this podcast is here to break down the stigma and bring real talk to the table. I'm your host, Jax Anderson. Thank you for listening. Today we're talking to my first interview.
Oh, I get to be the first one?
Yes.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yes.
Did anybody else say yes to you?
Yes,
I tagged a bunch of people I know.
Oh, good. Sarah and I are going to talk today about Sarah's experience being a mental health professional and what she brings to the table as far as wisdom and experience. So one of the first questions that I want to ask is, what is your title and your professional license, and how long have you been practicing?
Sure, yeah. I'm Sarah Kasten, licensed professional counselor. Let's see, I graduated in 2014, so this is my 10th year.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Some good experience. I found after 10 years doing it full time, definitely.
Yeah, it's been full time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So what is the name of your clinic?
Hope Rising Counseling Services.
And you have your own clinic?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, opened up in 2019, before the pandemic, and went all virtual, did that right off the bat. This was before really most people were virtual. Mm-hmm. So that was a challenge at first, and it was, surprise. 2 seconds later, the pandemic hit. Yeah. And I was already online, and no one really knew anything about that. So that kind of worked out.
Yeah. You were already set up and going.
I was already going. Yeah. Yeah.
Did people come to you with questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Other clinics, other therapists. I think that I was the only person that most people knew. At least the people that I knew, I was the only one that was doing it online. So there was, even my own therapist reached out to me.
How are you doing this?
Yeah.
What platform were you using?
I've always been using Simple Practice since the beginning.
Yeah.
I just got used to it, and I think it's too much work to figure out anything else, so I'm still with it.
It's a pretty user-friendly platform.
Yep, I find it pricey, but very, very worth it, honestly. It's been very worth the money.
Right, exactly.
It does
everything. Is pricey.
Yep. But yeah, so it was really intentional on my part to go online, because there was a weird point in my life. I was transitioning in a lot of ways. I went through a really awful divorce, soul-crushing kind of way, and I took a year off where I actually didn't work at all.
Good for you.
And it sounds like that was empowering, or maybe something that I, that sounds like good advice that I would give to somebody, right? Yeah. Give yourself some space to kind of do that. But I felt like I couldn't move. I couldn't, it felt necessary. I had to, so I took some space, grateful and privileged that people supported me so that I was able to do that. And when I crawled out of my hole, I took a look around and said, what the hell do I want to do with my life now, And right. And there was no going back, right? So this was, my world had blown up. And now it was now I want to be really intentional about how I put it back together again.
Wow.
And so doing an online clinic was vastly different than anything I had done before. I've been in residential, I've been in private practice, I worked for the county for years, going into people's homes and stuff. So I've been in a variety of settings, But I always made my life fit my work. And so this was the way for me to actually flip that on its end. I make my work fit into my life now.
Good for you.
And so virtual was the way that made that happen.
Sure.
So here I am, all these years later, still doing this, which if you had asked me years ago, would I ever do this? I would have laughed at the concept, because I'm the least technology savvy person that I know. I'm the last person to get the new phone. I don't even know. I'm not even on half the social media stuff. So it's pretty funny that I'm virtual, but I've been doing it for a while now.
That's impressive. You were a phoenix that rose from the ashes and took the opportunity to learn something new and excel at it.
Yes, it was so hard. It was so
Yeah.
overwhelming.
Yeah.
I knew how to be a therapist, but I did not know how to start a business. I didn't know
Right.
how to do billing. I didn't know how to get insurance contracts. I didn't know how to find people or advertise or anything. It was a lot. It still is a lot.
So if you are a newbie out there and you want to know some of these things, I bet you could hire Sarah to help you.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's very cool. Some good experience that you have to offer people that are learning.
Yeah, I do know how to build from the ground
Yeah.
up. I do know how to do that now, or at least the way I did it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What influenced you to become a mental health professional?
Oh, like in the first place?
Yes.
Oh gosh, yeah. Um, gosh, let's see. I I think I always knew that I wanted to work with people in some capacity. I started college thinking I was going to be a teacher, and that's what I was doing at first, or like that I was taking classes to be that. And I think I just took some classes that were in psychology, and they just resonated in a way that I was just like, I think that I got to do this now. And I got a bachelor's in psychology by the end of it, and I don't think that I thought a whole lot about what I was going to do with that, just that like that's all I wanted to know about, right? Like I was really interested in people, and and that was just kind of my thing. And then I kind of had this moment of like, well, what am I going to do with this, you know?
Right.
And but counseling really made a lot of sense, mostly because I think people have always come to me, talked to me for everything. I know a lot of therapists that say that. I think that it's a quality, right?
Yes.
Like there's like people overshare with me all the time. Like maybe I could make a living doing this. No, not really. Yeah, but I honestly think that it's like because I can do this all day long and I don't get tired of it, and because I think I happen to be good at it, and the intersection of those means that I can make a living doing this.
Yes, absolutely. I've always believed that people tell those people who become therapists, like, we are made known we should be a therapist by other people.
Yeah,
if
right.
we're paying attention.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I share the same experience with you that still I can be in a store where there's like nobody else shopping, and I can go to the least popular aisle, like looking for hemorrhoid cream. And the one person in the store is going to come into that aisle, and they're going to just start talking to me. I don't know what it is, but it's always happened to me. So that's why I did it too. So it is a common response that you hear.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Minds will make a living at it. That's really good. And so what are your favorite things about being a mental health professional?
I love hanging out with people all the time. People are fascinating. They're so, I never get tired of hearing people's stories. I think that I get so much more. I really believe I get so much more from my people than what I give to them. It's really me that gets it.
Right. That's amazing. What's your least favorite thing?
About being a counselor, or about like I guess
whatever you want.
I don't know how I'm going to interpret that question. Is my least favorite thing is like is feeling like I have to do more, not because that's the way that I really want to do it, but because I need to make a living.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, I feel that, because there are people that you would probably like to work with, but they don't have the privilege or the access.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Let me revise my answer.
Yeah, okay.
I hate working within the confines of insurance.
Okay.
But I do it intentionally, purposely. I'll probably never go not insurance. I know a lot of counselors that do that and respect and whatever, but like that's probably not what I'm going to do. But yes, I hate being told, you get up to this many minutes and in this way this many times. I hate that that myself and my client can't dictate the terms of our relationship.
Exactly.
Yes.
I agree with
you. And
you.
it's exhausting, and it depletes me.
Yes.
And so that is probably the thing I hate the most.
I agree with that. If there's any new therapists listening, or graduate students listening, or people that took a psychology class and they're thinking, maybe I want to do this, they might get something out of this segment. So what do you believe are the most important qualities or characteristics for a successful therapist?
I think there's a lot, right? That's really hard to answer that question. I looked at that one ahead of time before we came in here. I think that I think that my most valuable thing that I do as a counselor, that I would seek this out in other counselors, right? Like I look for this with people that I work with or when I seek out my own counseling. The ability to join another human. You know what I mean by that? I know you know. To listen, to really listen, right? Not just listening to what's being said, but like listening to the message under the message, right? I'm never going to be that person, right? I'm never going to feel what they're feeling exactly, right? Because they're another person, but the ability to enter their space and yet at the same time still keep like a foot outside too, if that makes sense.
It does, yes.
But yeah, I would say to join, like what it really means to join another human.
Right. You can learn to be better at it when you practice it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think like probably I get in my own way with that all the time, right? I get in my head. I, feel like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, or how am I going to help this person?
Right.
Their stuff is too scary for me.
Right.
I still have that 10 years later,
Yes.
right? Like, I have these moments of like, you want me to help you?
You should get a therapist for that. Yeah.
Am I the adult? Oh yeah, that's right. I am. But that's just my stuff, right?
Yeah.
That it's not even true. None of
Right.
that is, and that's just fear. Not, let me just restate that. That is fear, not just fear,
Yes.
right? It's fear, and that's, there are all the things that separate me, but that's the stuff that is distracting, right?
Sure.
So like I get in my own self or my own stuff instead of sliding into that space, and so absolutely. Do I get better at that? And I have days where I can do that more naturally, and I have days where it's a struggle. But yes, I think like part of that is like keeping that intention, right? Like knowing that that's what you want to do,
right? And catching yourself when you're not doing it, and then starting to do it again.
That's even like getting out of the I'm the professional kind of stance, because I think like people enter in thinking that I have the answers, that I'm going to tell them what to do, right? And I think that egos can get in the way of that too, right? And so like then you're coming to me, who's going to help you with your problems. Like there's kind of an automatic setup for like a disconnect, right? To not be actually joining one another,
right?
And so because of my stuff or their stuff, or just how things get presented, I have to really purposely climb out of that, you know?
Exactly. I think that is a misconception for many people that enter the field, and for many people that are considering to go see a mental health professional, that they are supposed to give advice.
Yes, right.
And tell someone what to do. Or a potential client is thinking, I'm going to go to this mental health therapist for some advice, and they're going to tell me what to do, but that's not what therapy is.
And then my problem's going to be solved, right? If I can just get the magic words,
right,
or the insight that I just don't
then
have,
I'll be happy.
Then we're good. Yes.
Right. But that's not at all what it is. So I'm glad that you brought that up, and that's very wise. What has been your most rewarding experience as a mental health professional, and how did it impact your career?
The most rewarding experience. There's supposed to be one, huh?
Or maybe there's more, but which one stands out for you?
Yeah. I mean, like, I immediately think of certain people. So let's see, how can I answer this question?
Keeping confidentiality.
Right. Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean is I don't want to, obviously I'm not going to give details, but like, hang on, say the question again. What is it?
What has been your most rewarding experience as a mental health pro?
Like seeing people get better.
Yeah.
I think that's my answer.
Yeah, seeing people get better, and you can tell.
Yeah.
They appear, They appear
you
lighter. Their skin is clearer. Their eyes are brighter. They just, and it's like watching a little bird learn to fly.
Yeah.
That's
watching a person crawl out of their own hole, right? Seeing someone who has just been devastated for so long, take a stand, right? Hold their head up, or tell the boss off, or you know what I mean, like these moments of like, fuck yeah,
proud of you, and you're there to witness it.
Yes.
And it's all them. they did the work.
Yes.
We didn't do the work.
No.
We might have held your hand or walked beside you along the way, but
no, half the time I'm just
did the work.
reminding you that you can,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's awesome. Yeah, it is beautiful to see that. Yeah. And if they stay in long enough, they'll see it too.
Yes, they will.
They'll have that experience. But what are some key ethical dilemmas that you've encountered, and how did you navigate them?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like the dual relationship stuff is probably one of the ones that comes up the most. But before I moved here, I lived in a small town, and so there was no avoiding it. You knew you were. I mean, the guy 2 doors down from me was my client with schizophrenia, and I knew his history. And we're running into each other getting our mail. You know what I mean? Like at the grocery store, at the wherever. I actually started doing it as part of, because you know, most people, we have like a spiel when we. I call it the spiel or whatever, right? Like when you start with somebody like, hi, this is who I am. You know, let me tell you about confidentiality. You know, like we have this conversation. So I just started like putting into my conversation about like, hey, by the way, sometimes we run into each other around this town. I'm like, let me tell you how I like to handle this. And, you know, so I tell people that you know, if we run into each other at the grocery store, you can approach me. But if you see me and I'm not being like, hey, what's up? Like, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just protecting your confidentiality. So like, just really like anything that I anticipate happening, right? Like just talking about it to them ahead of time is, you know, especially the ones that come up a lot. So that one, or the whole like, you know, can you see my sister or my boyfriend that I've been talking to you about for 3 years now wants to come see you. You know, like those kinds of ones. Those ones come up. Yeah. So I think like the dual relationship stuff is probably the most like common one that pops up a lot.
Yeah. You had to run into that a lot in a small town.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it wasn't like again, like some of it just like could not be avoided, you know, like I line up to some community event and there's my client leading the class, you know? And so like, honestly, like I just made it standard. Like every person that crossed my path, I was like, hey, if and when we run into each other, I just want you to be prepared. This is how I handle it. And then if that happens, we're going to bring it back up in our next session. And I want you to know that like, you know, whatever, like I usually just give them some kind of out, right? Like I'm happy to drop the class or whatever, you know, like the burden falls on me, right? You know, like that's where I try to put it. So.
Because it's their comfort level. That's the priority in that relationship.
The therapeutic relationship is the priority. I can take Pilates somewhere else or whatever.
Exactly.
Literally never signed up for Pilates. I don't know why I said that. But it's a class I could think of.
Right? It's a wise way to navigate it. To just put it in your informed consent and let them know right away.
Oh, I got another one too. There's another one that comes up a lot. So teens, minors. Yeah. Yeah, you know, you work with teens, especially the teens, right? Not so much with the kids. It's more the teens who like to keep secrets from their parents. And like, and many times for a good reason too, right? Like I respect their need for privacy and confidentiality, but like, you know, you're self-harming, you have suicidal thoughts. Parents have, you know, the rights to know what's happening in therapy with their kids. So like walking that line, I think that I end up with ethical dilemmas with that occasionally too, that those sometimes feel like the, you know, because those ones I don't anticipate ahead of time. Like I anticipate that there's going to be one. Right. But like,
we know that.
But the shock of it is, oh, wow, they just dropped this bomb on me. And now I have to decide what to do with this information, you know? And that's hard because of course my primary focus is the therapeutic relationship. I already made that clear. Right. But like, but I also have to keep safety and wellness and that's tricky.
It is tricky. And when I see teens, because teenagers, first of all, I love teenagers. I love working with teenagers. It is just a joy. It's so much fun. But teenagers are going to teenage, right? And they're doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing as a teenager when they keep secrets, when they triangulate a little bit. And, you know, if they're with their parent and the parent is disciplining them and then the client says, but Jax told me I didn't have to do that, you know, whether I said it or not.
That's how they interpreted it.
That's how they interpreted it. And now we have
angry parent.
This angry parent and this triangulation. So I definitely try, like you do with, you know, your example of the ethical dilemma, I put it in my informed consent.
Yeah.
So if there is ever a situation like that, please feel free that you can come to me and we're going to talk it through.
Yes.
Because maybe I said it, maybe I didn't. Maybe I said it in a certain way that was misinterpreted.
Sure.
But either way, maybe your teenager is being manipulative. Maybe I never said it and they're saying I said it.
Right.
That's okay
But if
too.
it sounds weird, come talk to me.
If it sounds weird, talk to me.
Yeah, and like not just in the writing, right? Like we have this conversation.
Yes.
I sit with everybody and I look them right in the face and I say,
yes,
this is how I like to handle this, you know?
Yes.
And then ask people for their input on that too, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always ask the teenager too, like, you're the boss. I might be paid by your parents, but you're the boss.
Right. This is your therapy.
This is your
space.
therapy.
Yep.
And what you say goes. But there are some things that I may have to talk to your parents about. But I'll let you know I'm going to do that.
I'm going to tell you.
Before I do it.
I always say that too. Like, I'm just going to look right at you and say, your mom needs to know about this. Yep. How about we invite her in?
Yes. Yes, exactly. Good for you. I love that.
You know, they just cut through all the bullshit.
Oh.
You know, like they're probably the most like real population. Like,
For
you know,
sure.
Like, yeah. So I think that I'll always keep at least a few teams to just keep me grounded.
Yep. I think that's the thing I
keep me in
respect
check.
most.
Because they'll just be like, yeah, you're not doing it right.
Yeah. And they'll just tell you.
They'll be like, yeah, I should probably do better.
Right. I have been called on my crap so many times by my teen clients. My favorite thing is when they roast me. I love being roasted, you know, like, you know, how you roast somebody.
Yeah, yeah.
But I love being roasted by my teen clients. It's cool.
Yeah.
And once they find out like how old I am actually, they're like, what? And then they really roast me like, oh, you were born in the 1900s? You know. Shit. Yeah.
Yep, I guess you could say that.
Anyway.
That's funny. Well, they obviously trust you.
Right? Yeah. If they're roasting you, they trust you.
They trust you. Yep.
Goals. How do you maintain professional boundaries while building strong therapeutic relationships? We kind of already covered that a little bit. And what advice would you have for managing therapist burnout with self-care?
Yeah. I mean, trying to keep balance the best you can, right? I don't know. I think that's like it's an always assessment, right? And I visualize like a scale, because to me, when I'm getting burnt out, it's a very deep imbalance that I feel. So sometimes just acknowledging that I'm out of balance is like the place to start, you know?
Sure.
And I think that it just happens all the time, right? Like for all kinds of reasons, you know, like I have the exact same client load that I did, but I moved and I brought on a new clinician, and those things instantly tipped me out of balance, right? And so like, even though nothing has changed, everything has changed.
Right.
So I went from like fine to like barely hanging on at times, you know? And so like, so I think it's just, it's like an always, you know, I think that's like something I'm like always monitoring, you know? So I don't know. I think like, I guess when I think of burnout, I think of like something that has been persisting for so long, right? So like you've been seeing, you know, if you're tuning into yourself, right? You've been seeing signs, you've been noticing things. Maybe you can do something about it, maybe you can't, right? But like, I think like awareness, right? Like keep checking in with yourself and listening to those signs.
Big time.
You know, not just like plowing through because, you know, because like, it feels like I shouldn't say no to this person because no one else will help them. Or like my client's in crisis, I need to squeeze them in. And like, you just can't, right? Like, I think I've just learned that through trial and error that like, you know, even though people say that they can't without you, they can.
Yes.
And it really can wait, you know, unless like someone's standing in front of a bus that's about to hit them, it really can wait.
Yes.
You know, and it just has to. So you have to keep your boundaries.
Exactly. And it doesn't help our clients when we are loose on our boundaries.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
We do have to model it.
No. And like, and I do make exceptions. But like, I think that's probably something that I've gotten so good at.
Yes.
Just because I've had to.
Right.
About being firm with boundaries. And like I set my schedule, and that's what people have to fit into. You know, like I don't work nights, I don't work weekends because I don't want to, you know, and if that were my zone, then I would do that, you know, but I mean like in the, you know, earlier on, it would be like, oh, well, that's when people are done with work. And so I have to be available for them at that time, no matter how much that's taking away from my family and whatever, And so like, no, it's amazing how when you don't have availability, all of a sudden, lo and behold, that person becomes available during that time slot. So yeah. Don't forget to focus on you.
Self-awareness.
Don't get so focused on helping others that you forget about yourself.
Have hobbies.
Yeah, right. Have a life, right? Yeah. Don't do all work.
Right. Like what I tell parents of teenagers. Okay, it's time for you to get a life.
Yes.
They're not kids anymore.
Yes. Right. Just like any, just like I think what you're naming there, right? Like we can get so, our kids are so consuming that like you're a mom and that's it. Like you can be a therapist and that's it.
Yes.
But that should not be it.
That should not be it. No.
And that's not it. Your identity. It's just the only thing that you're nurturing, right? Yes. So like it's time to nurture the other aspects of you.
Exactly. You're more than just a therapist.
Yes.
All right. So the next segment I want to talk about is community mental health.
Okay.
First question. What should people know about the connection between physical health and mental health? And how can they help destigmatize mental health in their communities?
Well, it's intricately intertwined. There is no separation between physical and mental health. Mental health is physical health, and physical health is mental health.
100%.
So that's that. What was the other question about how can
they help destigmatize in their communities that they live with, their families, their neighborhoods, their classrooms, their work environments? How can they help destigmatize?
I think the most powerful way is to just be open and talk about it, right? Like there's something that when something is unspeakable, right? When you don't talk about it, it becomes unspeakable.
Yes.
And there's so much inherent shame in that, so just saying like, yes, I am a person that walks with anxiety, right? And just like saying that. And I think like, cause so many people tell me that they feel like they're the only one, right? Yes. Like everybody else has got it together, right? When I look around the room and I look on, social media is probably one of the, like the most proponents of that because no one take pictures of their bad days. They only take the smiling, happy photos and the perfect houses and the whatever, right? But like, so I think like just, I think that you can destigmatize by talking. That's probably like the most, I honestly think probably the most effective way is to just say like, oh yeah, me too.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
That happens to me.
Yeah. And most people I've found when I do start talking about, for example, if I had too much anxiety, I had to leave.
Yeah.
Other people, it opens the door for them to then say, oh, me too.
Yeah, right.
Or, oh, I have anxiety too.
Yes.
I don't like being in crowds because blah, blah, blah. And so then you realize, number one, you're not the only one, but you were the one that just kicked the door open for other people to move that stuff and open that up.
Yes, you silently give permission for everybody else to do the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, second question. What are the biggest barriers to mental health care? And how can we work to overcome them?
Access, baby. That's a no-brainer. Yes. I don't know what the heck we're going to do. We got to blow up our system.
Yes.
There's not a one answer to that.
No.
Right. I mean, that's probably like that's my biggest motivating factor for even messing with the mess of insurance in the first place. That's why I deal with the necessary evil is because I think that, that was something that was really clear and really firm with myself about when I, decided to go out on my own and set my rules for how I was going to do this was I'm never going to ask people to do something that I myself wouldn't or couldn't do. And if I got to go see a therapist, I got to use my insurance.
Yes.
And, and so I never want to become something that I myself wouldn't even want to be a part of, you know what I mean? And so I take the insurance, but that is such a huge barrier. Like you don't, how many people do I have to turn away because I don't have their HMO for Medicaid? Right. I don't have a contract with their insurance company. Like you can still see me, but it's going to cost you, and most people can't do that. I can't do that. And so there's a lot of people I have to turn away just because of that, and so that is a for sure one. People call me up all the time, especially I was from the Dells before I moved here. And there was in the actual Dells itself, I think there was like my clinic, which I'm virtual, but I was still listed locally. And then there was like maybe one or two others.
Seriously?
Yes. And well, I mean, the Dells itself was only population 2,000. So like,
I suppose.
Right. But
Yeah.
like, but all the like little nooks and crannies around. So then there was like Baraboo, Portage, Mauston, right?
Yes.
But like each of those would only have a few clinics. And so like anybody in this entire big zone. So what I would hear all over the place is, I already called 3 clinics. They have a 3-month waiting list. Can you get me in sooner? And I was like, yeah, I can get you in the same day or same week, you know? And I'm like, yeah, that's great. You know, let me get you in, you know? But like, that was the thing that I kept hearing over and over was that. And then the other, like, you know, there's such a important, you know, to be able to find the match to the right counselor, right? You know, like if you don't like the first person that you get, go find another one. We're all really different.
Right. Yes.
You know, we all have a lot of like different unique things to offer. That's one of the biggest advice that I give people when they're looking for a counselor is like, just try again. Like don't be don't be discouraged. Like that person just wasn't a good fit for you. Go find another one.
Yeah.
But if there's only one, or if there's a 3-month waiting list or whatever, you're not going to be able to like interview a couple and see what you feel, you know?
Yeah, that is a problem because if they do wait 3 months, they go see that
therapist. You're going to get what you get at that point,
You're going to
right?
get what you get.
Yeah.
And if you leave and you're like, I cannot stand this therapist, I can't imagine telling them about what's going on with me, then you're on another waiting list for 3 more months.
But I've had crippling depression now for 6 months. That actually has been way longer than that because it took me to a breaking point to even make that call in the first place.
Yeah, they don't call when they're doing okay.
No. You're calling as a last resort. Like, how are you even going to get to the hospital that's 2 hours away? That is going to get you in 2.5 weeks, even though you're in crisis right now. And, you know, like that's, I mean, like, you know, they are in treatment with me, right? And I'm seeing them twice a week already.
Yeah.
But they need a higher level of care.
Right.
Yep, we're making those phone calls, but like, you got to hang in there for another month.
Right. We don't have much to offer people in a higher level of care in our country, really.
Right.
And
or unfortunately, they just get in there and they hang out with some meds and then get released, and that was all the treatment that they got.
Yeah, they got stabilized on medication, and that's it.
Yeah.
You know, or they end up in jail.
Yes.
Getting arrested
and then they're off their meds.
And then they're off their meds.
Well, right, like we were just talking about the access thing, but like I could list off at least 3 insurance companies right now that I've been trying for over 5 years to get a contract with them, and they keep telling me no, that they have too many providers in the area.
Zip code.
Right, which is like, I don't even, you know, I mean, okay, whatever, I guess you get to pick your own criteria, but like tell that to the people that can't find a therapist.
Yeah, why are they on a 6-month waiting list then if you have too many counselors in that area?
Kind of like what you're talking about, like if they stop giving contracts to people like me, then I won't have a choice but to join a big company, right? And then I have to go by their terms and not mine now.
Exactly. How do you approach supervision or mentorship for younger therapists? Do you supervise?
You know, I haven't had the pleasure because I'm kind of solo and I'm virtual and I don't even know how that works.
Right. Yeah, I've supervised virtually.
Yeah.
And not supervision as far as like I'm signing off on their hours because they were in Washington State.
Yeah.
But they called me up to get quote unquote supervision in regards to working with teenagers. They wanted to pick my brain. So they paid me once a month to do consultation about the teenage clients that they had.
Okay.
So, I mean, that was kind of nice. Like I thought, wow, this is kind of nice. You don't actually have to supervise hours to provide consultation to other therapists.
For sure. Actually, like most of the time, I still call it supervision. I'll be like, I need supervision, and what I mean is like, I need to
consultation.
I need consultation. Because I think that was like my training, right? Like that's what we called it, and that's what it feels like to me. I'm like, I need supervision, meaning like, you know, I'm coming home at night and I'm still thinking about this client. Oh, I need supervision, right? Like that's, you know, like there's certain things that I know that I need to go get that. So, so I guess I have done that part with people. So what was the question? How do I handle it?
Or just how do you manage it? Like work through it? What qualities do you look for in a mentor or a supervisor or somebody to consult with?
I don't know that I have that much to add on this one, to be honest.
That's okay. That's okay.
I haven't really done it that much. I would. I'd be open to it. Yeah. It'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, I love consulting with anyone. If somebody has a question, I consider it a give and take. You call me up, and then, 2 weeks from now, I have a question. I call you up. I have people like that.
Yes, I do that pretty, like informally all the
right,
time. If you ask me, I'm going to give you my best knowledge on that. I don't care what, what kind of arrangement that we have or whatever.
Quid pro quo,
yeah,
right?
for sure.
Yeah. Supervisor, I love having, like when I was younger, I had a really bad supervisor and I had a great supervisor. And this is just that doesn't mean they were a bad supervisor. It just means from my perspective, for me, they weren't a great supervisor. But I think that they were for other people. And so figuring out as a young therapist or somebody in grad school, it's kind of like hiring a therapist a little bit. You want somebody who's going to challenge you.
Sure.
You don't want somebody who's going to be passive and never correct you on anything and never, maybe they hate conflict or confrontation and they don't want to correct you on things, hold you accountable for things that you're doing wrong.
How is this person going to advance my skills?
And even if you are doing things right, how can they challenge you and push you to do more? That's the kind
Which means they better have a skill set at least a step above yours.
Right. And exactly. So that's the kind of supervisor I am.
Sure.
As a therapist, we should always be challenging ourselves and always be growing, looking to grow in that regard, because therapy is ever changing. You're never just done.
Yes, never.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
There's always more to know.
Right? Okay, third segment, social media and trends.
Okay.
So what are your thoughts on the trendy self-care movement and social media therapy and the self-diagnosing that's going on?
I have mixed feelings, I think. The self-care thing, I think it's good that we're promoting self-care, right? Like, especially, let's see, what are my thoughts on this? I think it's like, I think it like gets talked about a lot. When I ask people just about self-care, how do you, how have you been taking care of yourself is a question I might ask somebody, right? And like, or I might suggest to somebody that they practice some self-care here, right? And like, and a lot of times I'll get, especially with women, maybe I just haven't had this conversation enough with men, so I'm thinking of women more, I think. But like, I'll hear like, oh, I got my nails done, or I got my fancy coffee, and like, yeah, those are awesome, right? Like, I like that stuff too, but like, I think that like, we need something so much deeper, right?
Yes. Right.
So much more like, I'm going to use the word soul because I don't have another word for that, but your innermost self, right? Like, that's what we need to take care of, and that, but like, I think that it is good that we're, like as a culture acknowledging that we're not supposed to just like work ourselves to death and not take care of ourselves, right? Like, like I think about, like in other countries, we don't have to convince people to take breaks or use their vacation days. There's no such thing as I have 30 days of vacation built up. They've been taking them, right? Because they already know, right? So like as a culture, I think that we have that, that toxic, like push. That's your value as a human, is how hard you work and whatever. So like, I think that it's like kind of feels like a Band-Aid over a bigger issue, right? Like that's kind of what that feels like to me. So like we're going in that direction, right? But like, just don't land there.
Right. Don't stop there.
Don't stop there.
Right.
Yes.
I think I'm so glad that the hustle culture, quote unquote, is being canceled.
Yes, it is.
Because that was so toxic. There are, though, people out there that don't have the privilege of canceling their hustle culture. They work 2-3 jobs.
Right.
It's a
privilege to be able to take on less. Yeah.
Definitely a privilege. But also the self-care, I agree with you that people have to, there's self-care that's getting my nails done, having a coffee. And then there's self-care, which I define as, self-core. Like, what's in your core?
Yeah.
Self-awareness of that, insight into that. How are you peeling back the layers and really getting to the core of why you need the coffee and the nails done?
Yeah, right.
I mean, what would you say to people that are thinking, do I hire a life coach or do I hire a mental health professional for this? Life coaches are cheaper.
Depends on what you're trying to do.
Right, exactly. Do I want to get a promotion or do I want to, have some insight on my divorce?
Sure, right.
Like maybe you would hire a life coach to help you climb the ladder, the corporate ladder.
Right. Right. Like, are you looking for someone to kind of give you advice and tell you what to do? Or are you looking to, I don't know, I guess do some soul searching.
Do some soul searching. That's what psychotherapy is.
I did a training once that talked about self-care as a menu, which I kind of like that analogy. So I use that sometimes where they're I think I've like adapted it, but like basically like where they said like think of like a full menu, right? Yeah. So you've got your appetizers, your main courses, and your desserts. And so then the appetizers are like, they're quick grabs, right? Like you don't have to put a lot of energy into them, but like you've got them on hand and for a nice little pick me up, right?
Oh, that's so nice.
And but then your main courses, these are the ones that like you have to put a lot of energy into, right? There's preparation. These, they sustain you so much longer.
Sure, it
right?
takes time to be proficient.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes,
okay.
absolutely,
yes.
right. Like think it, you're, these are more long term.
Yeah, I'm buying what you're selling. That's awesome.
And then the desserts are like you can't have them all the time, but like boy, are they great, right?
Like a retreat,
like a vacation or a retreat, or and so like you look forward to them, and they're great, but like they're just not realistic for like every day. No. Right. And so, but the challenge is to like think about your menu, right? Because maybe you have a lot of appetizers and you've got desserts, but you've forgotten about main courses, right? Or like maybe you have a lot of main courses, but like on your day-to-day life, you don't have some little quick pick-me-ups or something to look forward to. And, and so like, so it just, keeping like I think you could keep going with it too. Like, sure. Your soups, your drinks.
Right. I mean, if you're a professional and experienced creative therapist, you can take that analogy for as long as you need to. You can ride that train.
But just kind of like, that is a sort of like a checkup, right? As a kind of like evaluation. How's your menu?
Yeah. Everybody's looked at a menu before. Right. We all know what appetizers and dessert and entrees are. Yeah. That's really, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I know you're not on social media, like all the apps or whatever, but like there's like TikTok, for example. There's a lot of people that are, and I love TikTok. First of all, I'm a huge fan of TikTok, 100%. Love TikTok. I think everybody should have a TikTok, whether you're going to post things or not. But because it's a great place to learn about things. Yeah. And people are sharing their experiences on there. Like, for example, let's just take ADD. People are sharing their experiences of ADD. Yeah. And they're talking about what their symptoms are and how they came to discover they had ADD. And other people...
Right, because they heard somebody talking about it on TikTok.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
They heard somebody talking about it on TikTok. And then other people that are watching that are then just deciding they have ADD and wanting meds for it, going to their doctor without getting assessed and all that stuff, which is fine. We're digging to the core, right? We're having some insight and self-care. Like, I need to explore this further because I identify with what this person is saying. So you might have ADD, but there are a lot of people that are just self-diagnosing, or they're diagnosing other people.
I think that's part of the mix, right? Like, I think it's like we're talking about it more. I think like before, when I first started being a therapist, it was really common for people to get an ADHD diagnosis for the first time as an adult and be like, oh my God, right?
My whole life makes sense.
This makes sense. I thought I was stupid. I was put in the remedial classes, whatever, like all the negative, core beliefs that you've developed now because people treated you like something was wrong with you, but like, oh, look, I'm not broken. I have ADD or whatever, and so like, I think it's great that like, this is in terms of ending stigma and having conversations is, we're probably having more of them now because it's like so widely out there, right? There's a lot of misinformation, right? Like borderline bipolar, right? Like, like there's a lot of like, oh, I'm so bipolar because I had emotions today, right? Like it's a verb, but, but like, so that, so I think it's like great for, starting conversations. And I do, like, people will say to me, like, I've been listening to this podcast on ADHD and I really resonate with a lot of the aspects. And I said, that's great, right? Like, I love that, that you're paying attention to that and that you're bringing it to the table. I think that you should get formally assessed. So, so like if you take if you take the assessment online, or if you watch the thing and you go, that might be me. Yes. That's the time to go get assessed, right? Like that's the thing think of that as like the, what's that word where it's just sort of like flaky. exit, right?
Yeah.
Where you're like, maybe.
Yep.
It doesn't mean that you have it, right?
Right.
Because so many of these can look like something else
Yes.
too, you know? But that's where you got to go seek out the professional to tell you, and that one that should give you reasoning too, right? Like I always say that too, is that, you know, if they diagnose you, ask them about it, right? Say, what makes you believe that this is an accurate diagnosis, right? Like, tell me your reasoning behind it, because, like, you know, ADD and trauma and anxiety all kind of show up similarly, right? And it's different in women and men and la la. So it's like, so please give me your rationale why you believe that this is this and not that. Or even if you don't know to ask that question, just say, tell me why.
Right.
You know, like you should walk out of there with an understanding, not just that I have ADD, but like my doctor thinks that, you know, my brain does this, you know, like you should be able to like have an understanding of why.
Yeah. I think that would, I mean, it's really unfortunate that so many people walk out of offices without that.
Yes.
That should have just been happening from the get-go.
Yes. Yeah. And then talk about things like whether or not medication is appropriate, or like what the role of that even is in your treatment. And, you know, instead of just being like, oh, I can't concentrate in school. Here's some meds for you to try. Let's see if this helps you. And then if it does, we'll say you have ADD.
Oh my gosh. How do you think the mental health field has evolved since you began? And where do you think it's headed?
How has it evolved since I began? I mean, I think the like most obvious thing in my head is the whole telehealth thing, because it's just so prevalent for me, right? So like, I think that I have been seeing, since I've started, I've seen more and more people already know about mental health diagnoses. When I say to them something like, I think that you might have depression, what do you think about that? They say, yeah, I know, right? You know, versus I think in the beginning I had to do a lot more of kind of like breaking the news, right? And it's really common when someone comes in, we always ask about family history during intake, you know, and, you know, for people to say like, nobody in my family talks about this, right? Like, so like, I suspect that Uncle Joe had deep depression because, you know, he completed suicide, but like, or like, you know, he was on antidepressants, but like nobody talked about it, right? Like it's so common for families to, you know, to like not talk about it. So I think even just like since I've started, people just are like already have some understanding. They already come in with an understanding of what it maybe even be happening to them, or at least like when I say this thing to them, I don't have to then explain what it is afterwards. You know what I mean? So like I think that's like that's been a change. And that it's just kind of more normal to come in and see the counselor, you know, that it used to be for people who were really suffering, really struggling, like out of desperation, which I still think that there's, you know, there's an element of that, right? But, you know, like I see more people coming in preemptively, right? I'm going through a major transition. I knew it was time to go see a therapist. Okay, like I'm not necessarily having a problem yet, but I'm anticipating one, right? You know, so like I think that's been a really positive shift of people getting actually like more proactive with it. So I think that's been a big shift.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm glad to see that. Intersectionality is the last segment. How do you approach working with diverse populations, and what advice would you give to people on developing cultural competence?
I saw that question on there, and you know what, honestly, I was thinking about like the clientele that I've been seeing, right? And I honestly, like, I don't really do a lot of like seeking, like advertising, seeking, right? I just kind of take who comes my way.
Yeah, you don't have a target audience. You just take who comes in.
Yep. I'm not like doing something specific, and we could probably, you know, there's probably an argument there that I'm doing some things, right? But like, I guess what I was thinking with that is that I predominantly see low to middle class white women. That's who comes into counseling by me without a lot of like prompting. That's probably, and like not just now, but like always. Has been.
Okay. Well, I mean, where you came from, the Dells area,
is
white.
That
okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
very white population there.
Right. Small town Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. And I mean, like, literally my clients followed me because we're all virtual, right? But like, I kind of, and not that like there's definitely been, more diverse populations, but like, I'm just, probably in my entire career, at least me, and maybe my clinics have been asked, right? But just me directly, I've probably been asked 2 times for a translator for someone who's like non-English speaking, right? That's only like occurred twice.
Right.
In terms of like, other, like other races, very limited, right?
Sure.
Definitely have, but like not
The
coming through my door.
There. Right. Okay. So there's really not much of an opportunity for you to, not that you don't have opportunities with like CEUs and conferences and stuff, but cultural competence trainings, the population just isn't coming to you. You would have to advertise.
I would.
And I don't necessarily see in this area a white woman counselor maybe attracting non-English speaking people or people of color to their practice, because what we should be focusing on is supporting the professionals of color that are already here or helping them get here, right? And so they can provide services to those populations.
I see what you mean.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's something maybe we could do that would be culturally competent. Is to provide supervision or a space.
No, I actually really appreciate the question. It made me think about it, you know, and it makes me think about like, well, what efforts am I doing? And the answer is, I would like to be doing more efforts. You know what I mean? Because because it made me think about it, and I'm like, well, because you're right. Like, more likely than not, white women are seeking me out because I'm a white woman,
correct?
Right? And I'm in that socioeconomic status, you know, and so like. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be me, right? But like, definitely I want to be promoting that.
Right.
And I think that for me in my life, right, I have to make sure that I'm not just falling back on my privilege by just not worrying about it, right? And when I get busy with my life, that's something that just happens. Right?
I admire
and
that.
So like staying diligent or like that's like I really genuinely appreciate the question because I haven't thought about it in a while.
Right.
And because I have the privilege to not think about it, right?
Exactly. But I admire how you're putting that as a mindset for yourself and trying to intentionally think about it, and that is being culturally competent in some way, shape, or form, right? Yeah. Making sure, just acknowledging the privilege, acknowledging and monitoring, are you falling back on it, like where, and even this conversation that we're having now, and that we just need to start talking about it. I think especially white women in this field, we need to talk about it more with other white women.
I agree.
So we will.
We can't make a white women club. That would be weird.
That would be weird. Yes, no. Just white women start talking about it. It's okay. It wasn't easy for me at first to start talking about it. It's not easy. I wasn't taught how.
Yeah.
And also, I was taught that there's something wrong with talking about it, and that, you're a bad person if you start talking about racism or any of those, perspectives. And it really was something that I needed to do a lot of reading and learning about, and you just got to start talking. I mean, you're gonna fuck up. Humble pie doesn't taste good.
Yes.
But just get used to it, because you're gonna eat it.
It's uncomfortable, but that's okay.
And that's what we do, though, as professionals. We have to get uncomfortable.
That's right. That's where all the growth happens.
Exactly.
What challenges have I faced working with the people with the overlapping marginalization? More often than not, it's like there's particular people popping in my head right now that I'm thinking about with that. It's not that they're having a mental health issue. It's our society has created conditions that make life so difficult that they can't just be, right? Yeah. So like we end up, that ends up being the focus of therapy, I guess, or that, a lot of that just sort of acknowledging that the lack of access to services, the fact that they just can't get out of being poor, right? That there is no way out, and they keep being blamed for that.
Yes.
That, that the suicide rates are the highest among your population for a reason, not because something's defective within you, but because that's how we all treat you, and, so like, I think that like, that, the people that have the more layers of overlapping oppression that you experience, the more we have to acknowledge all of that. And that becomes the forefront of it. That becomes the forefront of that, is basically helping people figure out that it's not them, even though, like, I think, like, many of them already know, right? But like, I think that when I think about helping someone with their mental health, right, there's kind of an implication that there's something internally happening, right? That either, like, there's sort of like an idea that something is malfunctioning, or, you know what I mean? Like, we even talk about it that way, right? Like, I overthink, I'm depressed, right? Like, we're saying that something is happening within. But what we're talking about right now, right, is so not within.
Right.
You are having a normal human reaction to these extreme conditions,
right?
And so it's like flipping it on its end.
Yes. Eventually, the ableism, the sexism, the classism, these marginalizations and oppressions that you feel is going to have an impact on you. There's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with society.
And not just you, but you're, like, carrying the DNA of the lines of all of the deep... Ooh, it's going to get me choked up, right? Like, you can feel it to your fucking core.
Right. Thank you for saying that. That was really well said. It's so real. And if anybody is willing to be authentic and empathetic, they'd relate to that in some way, shape, or form. Because we are all human. Some may be able to relate to it a lot more because they're experiencing exactly that. And some people might have to work harder to relate to it. But... we're all human, and we all deserve to have access. What are your thoughts on the role of mental health institutions? And I'm talking about, like, APA, American Psychological Association, things like that, in addressing broader social issues like racism, sexism, or economic inequality, ableism. What role do you believe mental health professionals should play in social justice and activism? It's kind of a long question.
Yeah. I think, like, those organizations are like they have to be the forefronts, right? Like, they're kind of like the parents, right? That hold the parameters and set the rules and remind us that, like, we can't get too far off. Like, these are the things that we got to be focusing on, right? So, like, they're the ones that have the power, and so, like, I think that we have to mobilize them when we need them, for advocating for this kind of stuff. And there is no such thing as taking the advocacy out of what we do. It's one and the same. That was the second part of your question. Is that what it was?
Yeah, social justice and activism. Like, I do feel
one and the same.
We could do more of that.
Yes.
It is one and the same. Isn't that part of a social worker or mental health professional's job? To advocate?
Yeah, publicly.
To educate?
Yes.
Yeah, publicly.
Right.
To help destigmatize. No matter what your opinion is, you are human and you have a right to that, but you're advocating for social justice. That's a social worker or mental health professional's
It's not only
job.
not inappropriate, but it's exactly what we should be doing.
Yes.
And honestly, we need to be protected to do that.
Thank you.
Because if I'm afraid that I'm going to get reported because I made some people mad about the controversial topic that I'm talking about, because come on, these aren't the cozy, comfy topics. Like, that's not what we're talking about here. We're going to ruffle feathers.
Right.
But, like, I'd have to know that I have someone powerful standing behind me that is going to say, no, she's okay.
100%.
She's allowed to use her voice, right?
100%. And that's why I was asking about APA and other, like, our
that would be them, right?
licensing board.
They should be the ones that are backing
that.
Yes.
They should absolutely be backing us up and making those statements, having those conversations.
Yeah, and not just that they're making the statements, but that, like, when stuff like that happens, we get a resounding voice that comes in and says, we actually support this.
Yes. In your opinion, how can the mental health field actively contribute to dismantling systemic barriers and promoting equity while ensuring that mental health professionals better account for the complex identities of clients and care plans?
I have to look at this.
Yeah, you can look at it. It's a long one. I gotta shorten these up.
It's all good. Yes.
Like, you are doing those things.
Yes.
You're offering telehealth. That's giving people that have transportation issues more access.
I think that we have to fight to, like, actually change the rules, right? So the laws, because I think that because we see the holes, right? And we also have the privilege because we have the professional title, right? So like my client who, you know, has the 5 layers of overlapping marginalization feels the holes and they're telling me about them. When I hear that, that becomes my responsibility to do something about it.
Well said. Some things that we as mental health professionals in this area, in any area, what we can do is we can even take that a little bit further, not only to speak about it like you are now, speak about it in any other venue that you have the opportunity, but also to take it to the people that write the laws in our local areas. How can, you know, we have this conversation? Can we do a community gathering and have this conversation? What are the holes that people that are meeting in these intersections, these marginalized areas, what do they need? What do they think?
Yes.
You know,
right. The actual people that this is affecting, right?
Right. And how can we boost their voices and help get, you know, nonprofits, organizations to meet these needs? How can we make that better?
Yes.
So I think that
I think it's like you were saying, initiating the difficult conversation, the one that people are avoiding or like are too busy to be bothered with, or what, you know, there's some judgment there, but like, but you know, like the ones that aren't being said, right? Like you got to say the unpopular thing, or the, you know, like be the person that stands up and says, hey, what about this, right? How come this isn't happening? You know, using you know, our stance to be able to say, no, actually I am a licensed professional counselor, I do know what I'm talking about, right? Like using kind of, I guess, the privilege, I suppose, is what I'm saying, right?
Exactly.
Is you know, using that as the way to say, we're gonna get uncomfortable right now, and you might not like me, but that's okay.
That's okay.
Well, I know, because how can I honestly say that I'm here to help my client if I keep listening to this, but then I don't take any action, right? Like the inaction is doing something too, you know?
Absolutely, because there's other clients that are experiencing the same thing.
Absolutely.
Okay, so...
Plus, I would want that done for me.
I would want that done for me too. Okay, last question. How do you handle situations where a client's cultural background or values differ significantly from your own? I may have already asked this question. And what gaps do you see in the current training and education of mental health professionals in preparing them to work with culturally diverse clients?
I'm not really sure about how people are being trained right now, because I think I'm just kind of removed from it. You know, I haven't seen a lot of people going through programs currently, so I'm not really sure. I remember what my training was. You know, like there was a number of classes, right? That was what they were. They made us go do a bunch of stuff, right? Like we had to go, we had to like purposely go put ourselves into situations where we did not normally feel like we belonged, right? You had to go get uncomfortable. That was the training. And think about it and write about it and whatnot. The part where cultural backgrounds significantly differ from my own, obviously people talk to us about everything, and so sometimes they tell me about things that I feel very strongly against, even mental health, right? You know, obviously the political climate, our culture lately, there's been, even just since COVID, right, there's been a ton of really controversial topics that everybody wants to talk about in therapy, right? And so like those are like the harder ones to keep myself out of, if that makes sense, you know. And I don't know, like honestly, I think it's just like it's different every time, right? With the conversation, I have to keep myself focused on what it is that we're doing here, which is not to debate a political, you know, stance or whatever, you know. But like, do people trigger me? Do they say the thing that makes me like internally cringe? Or, you know, like, I mean, like honestly, just anything that's sexist to me is like a hot button, right? Like I feel passionately about that. And so like, you know, to hear somebody that says a belief that just differs to my very core, right, feels like a gut punch internally. But like that I'm here for something else, if that makes sense. So you know, like I think that I'm a human and I don't always navigate that perfectly. I do my best to stay focused on not what they're saying, but what they're feeling under it,
Right.
the message under the message, kind of
Yes.
like what I was saying before, you know, like very often there's fear under that, right?
Exactly.
You know, so like I might reflect that, you know, but it is harder, right? Like those are distractions, so to speak, you know, and so like I try my best, and then sometimes I need a little time outside of therapy to just go,
Yeah, shake it off, shake
Yeah.
it off. Because I had the same experience you did when I went to grad school. They put us in situations, we had those conversations, but I don't ever remember really intentionally anyone helping us as white people talk about race. Or there were majority white kids in my master's, you know, in my graduate classes. And I don't remember the professors really intentionally having those conversations about race or sexism or classism. And really, I thought now looking back, at the time I didn't realize it, I didn't notice it, which is a problem. But looking back, I really feel like I was robbed. And I hope that they're having those conversations intentionally now, and even having conversations about how can you use your privilege to boost the voices of underprivileged. And I also think, and I wonder what you would think about this, you know, we get those like CEU brochures like from PESI.
Oh yeah.
I've wondered this, do I not get a lot of cultural competence PESI conferences mailed to me because of where I live? In not a very diverse area.
Versus like,
if I
maybe
lived
they
in
just
Chicago,
aren't having them,
are they not having them, or do they not bother with me because I live in a, you know, predominantly white,
that's a good question,
middle class area? So do they just not send them because they're thinking I'm not going to buy that?
Well, because I'm assuming they're marketing to you what they think you're going to sign up for, right?
Right. They want me to sign up.
Right.
And I'm not.
You're not in a diverse area, so maybe you don't
which
care.
I totally would sign up for that.
Yeah.
So I go seek them out.
Sure.
You know, but I wonder about that.
That was definitely part of my training. We definitely, like, literally the first time in my entire life I had ever even heard the concept of privilege was in my master's program. And we watched a video on it of all things, right? We watched a video and I learned about white privilege and I cried and I cried and I said, why didn't anybody tell me? I was so upset that I was 20, I don't know how old I was, 20 something years old. And this was the first time anybody had ever told me. And like, obviously I had it my whole life, but I didn't know it. I felt so like, you know, like I was so, I didn't even have words. I remember, I can literally remember where I was sitting and my professor being, you know, I think he very gently said something like, I just want to check in with you, right? And I'm just crying, no words, you know. And I said, I'm upset. I was like, I can still remember what I said. I said, I'm upset. That's the only word I had. And that was it. That was all. That was my. It was like a earth cracked moment where I was like, I've been contributing to the problem this entire time and I didn't even know it. You know, I was so upset about it. And yeah. And then it was everything changed after that, right? Like everything changed.
Yes.
But yes, they made us. You did not have a choice. We were having those.
I'm really glad to hear that. Yeah. I feel like I really got robbed out of that in grad school. Since then, obviously, like I have had.
How did you get into it?
You know, when my sister adopted from Africa.
Yeah.
And gosh, this was like over 10 years ago now, maybe even 15 years ago. And I wanted to learn what I could about just being an auntie to Black nephews, you know, and understanding what all is going to come with that. Because I also had a sense that this boy that's coming from Africa is also not, he was like 5 years old. He is also not he was not over there raised in the same Black community that young kids are raised in here.
Sure.
So he's got this double, you know, 2 hits against him right out the gate. So I had a sense of that. And I was awkwardly making posts on social media. I was trying to kind of stumbling around becoming aware of privilege without really knowing about the word privilege. And then my sister saw one of my social media posts and kind of like in a very professional way, slapped me across the face with a 2x4.
Yeah.
And used the word privilege, used this kind of idea that, because I was saying like, just stand up and the game will be over, you know, or something like that. This very white woman, like totally ignorant, you know,
trying but don't quite get it.
I was trying but I don't get it.
Yeah.
And my sister like responded, and I was just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I have no fucking idea what I'm doing. And I called her up and we talked. She gave me some books to read, some ideas, and then I just like ADD dove into that, right? And just tried to learn as much as I could. And since then, I've been learning as much as I can and eating the humble pie. And it sucks when I fuck up, but I didn't want to fuck up in the beginning, but I realized that part of this journey, de-centering my whiteness and deconstruction, is fucking up and having to eat the humble pie. You know, better I eat the humble pie than somebody else being hurt, you know, fuck.
Right.
You know,
right.
I can do that.
I can take a little hit to the ego.
I can take some hits to the ego, you know, and it's painful.
Yeah.
And nowhere near the pain that people of color and marginalized groups have felt.
Yeah, I see your social media posts about like what you're talking about, like the fumbling, right? Like I think it's amazing that you model that. You're probably the only voice that I see on, at least on my social media page, right? That just talks about, or just openly says that, right? Just openly talks about fumbling your way through that. You know, I can think of someone. A young white woman who had just learned these concepts and was coming into therapy. And like, I felt like I wanted to like mother hen her, right? I was like, I know it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Yes. This is part of the process. Your world has been shattered. Right. And like, I felt bad for her, but I also felt amazed for her, you know, because you're like, it's okay, you know, and not that I don't feel on the other side of it either. Like I still feel like my earth gets cracked and my head gets thwomped with a 2x4.
I mean, and there's this like, a thing that white women specifically will do often is center themselves in this, right? How difficult it is for them, how hard it is for them. I woke up to this, and those are all valid feelings. Those are all valid feelings, and we should be having those feelings so we can walk through this, right? But at the same time, we have to be careful where we're expressing that. Yeah. Because then we're just centering ourselves and we're making it about us, right? So the reason why I post that stuff on social media and I talk about fumbling through it and fucking up and this is what I should have done or how do I handle this isn't, I'm walking this line of trying not to center myself, but also like just starting the conversation. Maybe if I talk about it, somebody who follows me or somebody's going to join in the conversation on there and we can have a conversation. And when I do that, I'm trying to talk directly to other white women. I'm not trying to talk to other people. They don't need us to talk to them about this, you know what I mean? And it's not their job to talk to us about it. So, but it is interesting that I'm, you know, am I centering myself too much? You know, and it's okay. Tell me, am I centering myself too much? And, you know, but I really want to talk about this. So take it offline.
No, I know that feeling too, right? Like, is it okay if I do this? Right. Or, you know, did I say it too much? Or did I, you know, what if I use this term? Or what if I say it in this way? You know, there's all this like too scared to fuck it up, right? Like I'm too scared that I'm going to piss somebody off or whatever, that like I end up not trying or like I'm just going to never mind, not talk about this at all, or whatever, right? Right.
Unfortunate that happens is that I'm just not going to say anything then because I don't want to fuck it up and I don't want people to be mad at me or I don't
want to be seen as racist.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. Like I told my mom, I asked my mom once, I was having a conversation with her. She's going to hate me if I share this, but whatever, fuck it. I'm going to share it, Mom. And she said to me, we were sitting in the car, she said something pretty racist. I can't remember what it was, but I said, that's kind of a racist statement to make, Mom. And she looks at me and she goes, I'm not racist.
Right.
I am not a bad person. And I'm like, whoa.
I didn't say that.
I said, what I said, because I knew, like, if I said that's not what I said, or if I said, like, I didn't say you were a bad person, I knew she was just nothing would happen. So I wanted to shock her out of her reaction to me. So what I said was, why do you think you're not racist? I am. I'm racist.
Oh, that's a good one.
I have internalized racism.
Yeah.
Every single day.
Yeah.
I have to work on things that I become aware of that I didn't even know was racist.
Yeah.
And I got to stop doing that. When I see a Black person in the mall, I am very aware of there's a Black person over there. That's a racist thing to think.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So, like,
it's in me. I don't want it in there.
So I don't want it in there, but it's in me. So why isn't it in you? You raised me. And she just, like, got real quiet and was like, well, yeah, I guess. And I said, I'm not saying you're a bad person, Mom.
Yeah.
But there are some indoctrinations and things that we've internalized as white people that we have to be very aware of. And I was shocked. I like almost shit myself.
Wow.
That she just, it worked.
Yeah,
I shocked her out of it, So I mean, I don't know, maybe that's a response that somebody can use.
No, I appreciate that. No, that's awesome. Because I know what you mean. Like the, like the defenses come up and then the conversation is just over. Right.
What do they call it? White fragility. They call it. Yeah. Like for sure. Yeah. The book. Yeah. But like, that's what it is. So. Yeah. Well, thank you for coming. I know we talked so long,
thanks for having
I'll have
me.
to edit this down to maybe 2 parts. But yeah, thanks for coming.
Maybe there's something in there to use.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say to leave people with before we end?
No.
Okay.